The knife is a Spyderco SpyDK, an N690 cobalt steel. This isn't a model that I was really looking to pick up when I first saw it. There's been some really great photography that keeps coming up on the Spyderco official discussion group on Facebook, and that really convinced me to pick it up and give it a try. I was surprised at how much I liked it. I started carrying it and I started finding myself using it. The ergonomics on the knife were really good. The steel that's used, N690 cobalt, is a Bowler Udahome steel. It's a fairly basic steel, 5860 Rockwell. The composition is a little over 1% carbon, about 17.3 chromium, 1.5 cobalt, small amount of manganese, small amount of vanadium, a little over a point of moly. Edge retention is similar to VG10. It's not exactly an exotic steel. The chromium content in the steel is pretty high at 17.3%. That's approaching LMAX at 18%, or something like ZDP at 20%. But the difference between this and ZDP is the carbon content. ZDP has 3% carbon. That's a lot of carbon in the steel. This is just over 1%. So with ZDP, the carbon is really going to use a lot of the chromium in the steel to create chromium carbide. With this, there's just not enough carbon for that. So you're going to have more free chromium in the steel for corrosion resistance. Consequently, the steel has really, really good corrosion resistance. Bowler suggests a good finish for optimum corrosion resistance, but I haven't found it to be a problem at all, and it's not even something I think about with this knife. The ergonomics on the knife are good, and it's a slip joint, so there's no lock on it. But the 50-50 choil that it's got really prevents you from any issues, and the action on it is good. Of the Spyderco slip joints, the SpyDK, the action on it is amongst the best. The blade geometry on the knife is really good. It's something I picked up on right away. It's very thin behind the edge bevel. I haven't measured it, but this orange knife has a 30-degree inclusive bevel on it, and you can see how small it is. So it gives you an idea of the blade geometry that you're dealing with here. Also, the thin tip I found to be very, very useful with the knife. The knife is extremely light, wire clip, carries really well, and you can drop it in your pocket, and it's not of any issue. And when you need it, it's there for you. I got this orange version, and I liked it so much that I went ahead and picked up a black version of the knife. And I've carried this quite a bit. I've usually got it on me. It's usually dropped in a pocket somewhere. I've used this one more, and I've sharpened it more. I had pushed it to the point where it was dull. Now, this steel, N690, will come back from stropping pretty well. It's not going to come back to hair whittling from being dull, but from a strop, especially something like a diamond-loaded strop, that's a fairly aggressive strop, it'll strop back to sharp, to a functional edge, better than most steels. The blade geometry on the knife makes it very functional with cutting. It really does a good job with that. I had pushed this black one to the point where it was dull, and I wanted to show that even dull, because of the blade geometry and the tip, this knife will cut pretty well. It'll hang in there pretty good. Still, I needed to sharpen the knife. Now, with this steel, your main carbide former is going to be chromium. Maybe a little bit of moly, but really not much to it. Like I said, mainly chromium. So as far as stones go, you're really open to whatever options you want. So for me, this is a pretty straightforward sharpening on Shaptons and Suhiro. I mean, you don't have to use diamond. It's pretty easy going. So starting with a 500 Shapton, setting the edge bevel, taking off the bad steel, moving on to a 2000, then a 6000, then a 16,000, and then moving on to a 20K Suhiro. After that, moving on to strops, and for this I used wood strops starting at 1 micron, then moving down to half micron, and then quarter micron. The polish that comes up on this steel is really nice. It's really something that I appreciate about the knife. It really takes a polish well. It's one of the characteristics of the steel that I like the most. The sharpness will come up, but it's a very fine edge. It's not an aggressive edge. This steel simply doesn't have the carbide content for that, or the hardness. But the edge does come up. It does get very sharp. It's probably very easy for somebody, even who's not a skilled sharpener, to get a very functionally sharp edge on the knife. But bringing it to a high sharpness, like I said, the edge that it takes is a very, very fine edge. It almost wasn't a knife that I took seriously when I first got it, but it's one that I carry quite a bit now, just because of its ease of carry and really how functional it is. I mean, really, the thinness of the tip and the blade geometry, I've found that this, as far as when I'm using it, when I'm going through cardboard, if I've got stuff to cut up or packages to open, I've found this rivaling sheep's foot or Wharncliffe blades for me, just because of the tip and how well that it cuts. So if you're in the market for something small, thin, not terribly concerned with a lock, this is a pretty good option to look into from Spyderco.